Hello Internet, and welcome to a new tutorial. In this video, I'm back to making psychedelic hardware tutorials, and I couldn't find a better way to do it than actually making this forest dark lead that got requested a lot on the Behringer Neutron. So for this lead, we're going to use normal FM, I mean between oscillators, we're going to use filter FM, and we're going to use a lot of randomness because this is Psytrance and we use a lot of sample and hold and randomness. So with that said, let's dive into our tutorial. So the first thing is I'm sending an ARP signal from Ableton Live, and the ARP is set to 1/16th, and by the way, we're on 148 BPM, and there's a random LFO modulating the length of the gate of the ARP, and like so we can get some sort of a groove. So I'll just set the neutron to the second oscillator, I'll set it on so, and just listen to what we'll get. In other synth, I would have just modulated the decay of the amp envelope, but as I can't modulate that in Neutron, it was just easier to randomize the gate length of an ARP and set the amp envelope to 100% sustain, low attack, no release, so, we can get this groove. So anyways, let's start, by making the FM on the oscillators. So I'll set both oscillators to sine wave, just like so. I'll set the range to full. And now what I'm going to do is, well, first of all, I'll just pass by this overdrive unit in here because I don't want it, but you can use it. So by bypassing the overdrive is basically patching the filter to the VCA because, in the internal structure of the neutron, after the filters, there's the overdrive and then there's the VCA. So basically routing the VCF to the VCA will pass by the overdrive. So with that done, I'll leave the oscillator mix to oscillator 2. I guess now you know it. I always use oscillator 2. I don't know why, but anyways, I'm using it. So I'll just take the output of oscillator 1 and I'll make it modulate oscillator 2 input, basically pitch modulation in here. And now listen to what we'll get. That's too loud. Yeah, nothing too special, but let's start playing with the tune parts of both oscillators. We can actually sync them, and this is, by the way, soft sync, so it's just syncing the pitch and not the phase. And we can turn it on and see what we'll get as results. As you can see, I've tried both, with oscillator sync on, with oscillator sync off. And personally, I think there's a lot of timbres to discover with the oscillator sync off. So I'll leave it like so. Now, as you can see, I was modulating the tune part and we got like some really cool sweet spots, just like so. I'm going to do actually the same thing with a random modulation source on the tune part, of the first oscillator, and I'll do that with the sample and hold. So what I'm going to do, I'll just take a patch cable and I'll route the sample and hold out to the multiplier. Now, why I'm routing it to the multiplier is because I'm going to use this randomized signal again in this patch, and by routing it to the mult, I'll split it into two, and like this I can use it for the tune part in here and for later purposes, as you will see. So anyways, we got the sample and hold to the multiplier, and then what I'll do, I'll take another patch cable and I'll I'll route the first multiplier out into the first attenuator in here. So basically this attenuator will be our dry and wet potter, if that makes sense. So now I'll just take another patch cable and I'll take this white one in here and I'll route the first attenuator out to the first oscillator in, just like so. And now I'll just crank that rate a little bit up. Now if the attenuator is to the hard left, we have nothing, just like so. But now listen what will happen when I'll start, moving it to the right. That's pretty nice. I've actually let the rate set to manual in here, even though I can synchronize it, because I've actually wanted to give it like more of a humanized modulation. And I'm going to make it like even more humanized by adding the glide in here. So the modulation, as you've heard, it was stepped, and now I'm going to make it, just smoothly switch between the steps of the sample and hold modulation. So we'll get something that sounds like this. As you can see, just playing by the tune parts a little bit, even though with all the modulation going on so far, got us to these like nice sweet spots that I really like. It sounds like this. Perfect. Now let's move to the filter. So for the filter, I'm going to set it on bandpass, just like so. And I'm going to give it some resonance. And as I said, I'm going to make some filter FM. And actually, by default, in the Neutron, the LFO is set to modulate the filter, and we can dial this modulation with the mod depth in here. And I'm going to use that to achieve some filter FM modulation, just like so. So first of all, I'm going to crank that rate up, and I'm going to give it some mod depth. So just a tiny bit, so listen to what we'll get. I've actually done that because I've wanted just to get the right amount of the LFO rate before I'll start further modulating the filter cutoff, because actually I want it, as you've heard, I want it to get modulated, just like I've done with my hand, but, automatically. And I'm going to do so by routing the same signal that we got in here from the sample and hold that we've just added to the multiplier. I wanted to modulate the frequency of the filter, and I want also the LFO to modulate the frequency of the filter. So basically I want to modulate it with two sources. How we're going to do that? So first of all, I'm going to take this modulate depth out, and now what I'm going to do, I'll take this patch cable and I'm going to modulate, and I'm going to take the multiplier out in here and I'll set it to the invert input. that we have in here. So basically we are inverting the signal which is sent from the sample and hold. So basically we will modulate the filter with the inverse signal of what we're doing with the tunage. And like so we can get like, as we don't have two sample and hold modules, this is some sort of a trick that will help us get like some sort of two sample and hold modules, if that makes sense. So anyways, I have it into the invert, and I'll take the invert out just like so, and I'll add it to the sum one input just like so. Now what I'm going to do, I'll take the sum module 1 output just like so, and I'll make it modulate the frequency of the filter. And basically what the sum does in here, we're going to sum or like combine two signals together. And now this is the first signal. The second signal is going to be our LFO. So I'll take the LFO output from here, and I'm going to set it to the second attenuator just like so. Now why I am sending the LFO to the second attenuator, it's because I really want to modulate just a tiny bit from the LFO to get this filter FM modulation. And if I'll send it like all the way up, you know, just like 100% modulation, it's going to sound really not nice. And so by sending it to the second attenuator, I can actually control or dose how much I'm sending from the LFO. So let's take the attenuator 2 out. I'll take a longer cable, and let's set it to the sum 1B input, just like so. And now with the mod depth, we can control the overall, you know, like both modulations, and with the attenuator 2, we can control the LFO. So what I'm going to do, first of all, I'll leave the second attenuator off. I'll dial some modulation just to control how much of the sample and hold I want it to modulate, and then I'll add the LFO. With that, listen to what we'll get. And now, let's listen to what we've just made with a kick and bass. As you can see, what is really cool is that we can control, you know, as I said, the filter modulation, you know, with the mod depth, and this will actually give us two different timbres from one single patch. And I really like that because personally, I really like the sound. And at the same time, I really like this one too, you know, with the sample on hold and the LFO. And by the way, I was using, for the LFO shape, I was using a sine wave, but you can actually use whatever you like. And I think the square can give us some really unique results, just like so. I personally like sine wave. I think it suits my point of view better, but you can, you have 5 shapes and you can use whatever you like. You can even randomize this by sending, just a sample and hold or a randomized signal, to modulate the LFO shape. But anyways, with this is the end of our tutorial. I really hope you've liked it. I really hope you've learned something new. And if so, and you want to help me make more psychedelic tutorials, more psychedelic music, please consider becoming one of my patrons. Have a great one.